There are buildings on this planet that should not be standing. Not because they are old, because the people who built them should not have known how. In the mountains of Peru, a fortress covers an area larger than 6 football fields, and its walls are 20 meters high. The civilization that built it did not exist, according to the standard textbooks, for another 500 years. In the mountains of southern Siberia, a complex of 30 buildings was constructed in approximately 2 years on a remote island, then abandoned immediately, without a single piece of evidence that anyone ever lived inside it. In the waters off Japan, a structure 25 meters tall sits on the ocean floor. Its terraces and right angles cut so precisely that 2 of the world's leading geologists have spent 30 years arguing about whether it is a building or a rock. These are 7 structures that break the official timeline of human civilization. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why none of them should exist, and why that question matters more today than at any point in the last century. Site 1. Kuelap, Peru. You are standing at the base of a wall. Not a wall you can see over, not a wall you can touch the top of by reaching up. A wall 20 meters tall, 6 stories of carved limestone rising straight out of the mountain, disappearing into cloud. The cloud is not weather, it is permanent. You are at 3,000 meters above sea level, inside the Amazon headwaters, in the northern Andes of Peru. The air is cold and wet. Below you, invisible through the mist, a valley drops away into jungle. Above you, the wall continues. This structure contains over 100,000 individually carved limestone blocks, over 10,000 tons of stone. It was built in approximately 600 AD by a people called the Chachapoyas, the warriors of the clouds, a civilization so completely absent from most history textbooks that the majority of people alive today have never heard their name. The Inca had not yet risen. Europe was in the early Middle Ages, and here, on a mountain ridge at the edge of the Amazon, a city of 3,000 people was already standing. Now consider what building a city at 3,000 meters in the cloud forest actually means. It rains here, not occasionally, constantly. The ridge where Kuelap sits receives moisture rising from the Amazon basin. Warm, wet air hitting cold Andean stone and releasing water every single day of the year. The engineering problem the Chachapoyas had to solve was not how to lift stone. It was how to stop water from destroying everything they built. Keep a city of 3,000 people dry at the top of a waterfall using 6th century tools. In 2022, a team of engineers from Drexel University, Brown University, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison conducted a UNESCO-supported research project at Kuelap using drone LiDAR mapping, a laser-based imaging system that can reveal structures hidden under soil and vegetation. What they found inside the walls stopped them. A drainage system so sophisticated, so precisely integrated into the foundations, that, in the language of their own published report, they could not fully account for it given the tools available in the 6th century. Not partially explain, not mostly understand, could not fully account for. Here is what makes that finding impossible to dismiss. The drainage channels at Kuelap are not gutters carved into the surface. They are not trenches dug around the perimeter. They are built into the structural fill of the walls themselves. A layered internal system of stacked limestone that functions as a controlled filter, directing water downward and outward through the mass of the structure before it can reach the foundations. This is not intuitive engineering. This is not something you arrive at by trial and error in one generation. It requires understanding how water moves through porous stone under pressure, over time, at altitude. It requires designing for conditions that will not manifest for years after construction is complete. Site 2, Mesa Verde, USA, December 18, 1888. Two ranchers, Richard Wetherill and his brother-in-law, Charles Mason, are moving cattle across the top of a mesa in southwestern Colorado. The air is cold and dry, snow on the ground. They reach the canyon rim and stop. Across the canyon, set into a natural alcove in the cliff wall, is a city. Not ruins, not rubble. A city with standing walls, intact rooms, a 4-story tower still reaching toward the overhang above it. 150 rooms, 23 circular ceremonial chambers sunk into the ground, their wooden roof beams still in place. Painted plaster still on the walls, pink and white and ochre, in colors that have not faded because no rain has touched them in 600 years. Wetherill and Mason stand at the canyon rim and stare. Neither of them speaks for a long moment. The city has been there since approximately 1200 AD. The people who built it left around 1300 AD. For nearly 6 centuries, it sat inside that cliff alcove, perfectly preserved, completely invisible from the mesa top, unknown to everyone except the Ute people who considered it sacred and did not speak of it to outsiders. Wetherill named it Cliff Palace. That name has stayed. He was looking for a lost cow. He found the largest cliff dwelling in North America. The easy assumption is that Cliff Palace is the achievement. It is not. Cliff Palace was built and abandoned in less than 100 years. The real achievement was built 4 centuries earlier, and it had nothing to do with stone rooms or cliff walls. It had to do with water. Mesa Verde sits in the high desert of the Colorado Plateau. Annual rainfall averages around 45 centimeters. Barely enough to support dry land farming, nowhere near enough to sustain a permanent population of thousands without a managed water supply. There is no river. There is no spring at the surface. There is, technically, no reason a large settlement should have survived here at all. In 1995, water engineer Kenneth Wright of the Wright Paleohydrological Institute was invited by Mesa Verde National Park Ranger Cynthia Williams to study the site's water history. Wright had made his name studying the Inca water systems at Machu Picchu. He brought the same methods, field surveys, soil augering, surface infiltration tests, geomorphological analysis, to Mesa Verde. He spent 8 years on the project, working under a commission from the American Society of Civil Engineers. What he found changed the entire framework for understanding who the ancestral Pueblo people actually were. Between approximately 750 and 1180 AD, 4 centuries before Cliff Palace existed, the people of Mesa Verde had built and maintained a network of reservoirs, check dams, and water capture terraces across the mesa top. The system collected runoff, filtered it through soil, stored it in stone-lined reservoirs, and distributed it across the settlement. In the words of Kenneth Wright's published report, released in 2003 as part of the American Society of Civil Engineers Essays in Public Works History, it created a sustainable domestic water supply in conditions where no sustainable supply should have existed. The precision required to design that system, to calculate runoff volumes, capture rates, and storage capacity across a sloped desert plateau without instruments of any kind, has not been fully explained. Here is the detail that reframes everything. The water infrastructure at Mesa Verde was not built alongside the cliff dwellings. It was built 400 years before them. 4 centuries of engineering investment, of building, maintaining, repairing, and improving a water system, happened before a single room of Cliff Palace was carved out of sandstone. These were not primitive survivors scratching at desert rock hoping for rain. They were a civilization that had spent 400 years solving one of the hardest engineering problems in the American Southwest: passing that knowledge from generation to generation with enough precision that a 21st century hydraulics engineer could look at their reservoirs and call them, in professional language, functional. The cliff dwellings came at the very end. Cliff Palace itself was occupied for less than 100 years. The ancestral Pueblo people moved into the cliff alcoves around 1200 AD, built their most spectacular architecture, and then, within a single generation, were gone. The water system outlasted the people who built it. The knowledge did not. Between 1275 and 1300 AD, a window of 25 years, the entire population of Mesa Verde walked away. Not conquered, not destroyed. The walls were intact. The painted plaster was untouched. The ceremonial chambers were sealed. They left, and they did not come back. And for 600 years, the cliff held what they had made inside it, waiting for a rancher looking for a lost cow to glance across the right canyon on the right December morning. The drought hypothesis exists. It is credible. A major drought struck the region between 1275 and 1300. The conflict hypothesis exists too. But a civilization that spent 400 years engineering a water supply in a desert does not abandon it because of drought alone. They had solved drought before. Something else ended them. Something that 4 centuries of engineering knowledge could not outlast. What it may have run out of is something harder to measure than rainfall. That question has no answer yet. Site 3, Cahokia, USA. Close your eyes for 3 seconds and place yourself in the year 1100 AD. You are not in Rome. You are not in Constantinople. You are not in the great trading cities of China or the caliphates of the Middle East. You are standing on a flood plain in what will one day become the state of Illinois, on the eastern bank of the Mississippi River. And around you is the largest city in North America. Feel the scale of it. 120 earthen mounds rising from flat ground, the largest of them 30 meters tall, covering 15 acres at its base. Plazas the size of 40 football fields, leveled and smoothed. Thousands of wooden buildings arranged in administrative districts and residential quarters, and what the archaeologists who mapped it would later describe, without irony, as suburbs. Somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 people, living, working, trading, and worshiping. In a city that has roads and markets and a ruling class and a calendar system. At exactly this moment in history, 1100 AD, the city of London contains approximately 10,000 people. The city of Paris contains approximately 15,000. The city on the Mississippi floodplain is larger than both of them combined. Its name, a name given much later by a different people entirely, is Cahokia. The size is not the impossible part. The impossible part is the speed. In approximately 1050 AD, the site that would become Cahokia was a village. Population, somewhere between 1,400 and 2,800 people. Ordinary, unremarkable. One of dozens of similar settlements scattered across the fertile Mississippi floodplain. Then, within a period of less than 50 years, everything changed. Researcher Timothy Pocketat of the University of Illinois calls it the Mississippian Big Bang. Between 1050 and 1100 AD, the population of Cahokia grew from under 3,000 to over 15,000. Not through gradual accumulation, not through slow organic expansion. The evidence, published in Pocketat's 2019 book, Revealing Greater Cahokia, shows that a small group of planners, possibly a single individual, redesigned the entire settlement from scratch in a single generation. Existing houses were torn down. Naturally uneven terrain was leveled. In some places by several meters, using hand tools and wicker baskets. A complete urban grid was imposed on the landscape. Ceremonial plazas, administrative compounds, residential districts, defensive palisades at the perimeter. The planning precision is consistent with state-level governance. The technical classification that archaeology applies to whoever built Cahokia is the word chiefdom. That word does not come close to describing what the evidence shows. Stand in front of Monk's Mound and try to understand what you are looking at. It covers 15 acres. It stands 30 meters tall, roughly the height of a 10-story building. It has 4 terraces, a flat summit platform, and a base circumference larger than the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza. By volume, it contains more earth than that pyramid contains stone. Every gram of that earth was carried to the site in wicker baskets, deposited in precisely calculated horizontal layers, and compacted by hand. Over 50 million cubic feet of soil, moved with no wheels, no draft animals, no machinery of any kind. Monk's Mound is one of 120 earthworks at Cahokia. Not the only one of 120. In the 1960s, astronomer Warren Whittrey identified a circle of large wooden post holes near Monk's Mound that he named Woodhenge. The circle tracked the solstices and equinoxes. When Whittrey calculated the alignments, they were accurate to within fractions of a degree. A population study published in Quaternary Science Reviews in 2007, co-authored by Paucatat and colleagues, confirmed that the explosive growth of Cahokia between 1050 and 1100 AD was a deliberate, coordinated, large-scale reorganization of human settlement across the entire region. There was not another city of Cahokia's size anywhere in what is now the United States until the city of Philadelphia in the 19th century. Not the 18th century, the 19th. By 1350 AD, Cahokia was empty. 250 years after the Mississippian Big Bang, the largest city in North America had been abandoned. Site 4, Bingling Temple Caves, China. You are on a boat. The journey takes 3 hours. There is no other way to get there. No road reaches this place. No trail cuts through the canyon walls. You are crossing the Liujiaxia Reservoir in Gansu Province, deep in the interior of China, and the landscape around you is unlike anything most people outside this country have ever seen. 60-meter cliffs of red and ochre sandstone rise straight out of the water on both sides. The yellow river compressed into a corridor of stone that blocks the sky to a thin strip above. Then the boat rounds a bend, and the cliff face is no longer empty. 40 meters above the waterline, high enough that you have to tip your head back to see it. The rock opens into niches, dozens of them, then alcoves, then figures. Stone figures, carved directly into the vertical face, some of them larger than a house. The largest single figure is 27 meters tall. It sits in the cliff with the stillness of something that has been there for a very long time and expects to be there for a very long time more. The first chisel mark in this cliff was made in 420 AD. The person who made it was hanging from a rope. Understand what 1,600 years of vertical carving actually requires. There is no flat surface to work from, no scaffold that can be anchored to blank rock without destroying the rock, no fixed reference point that persists from one generation to the next. The artisans who began in 420 AD were dead before their students finished learning, and those students were dead before their students began. Every generation inherited a cliff face already partially carved and had to continue it. Matching proportions, matching depth, matching stylistic register. Working from ropes, in wind, above a river, on porous sandstone that could crack without warning at any chisel blow. Over 16 centuries, craftsmen from the Western Qin dynasty through the Northern Wei, the Tang, the Song, the Yuan, the Ming, and the Qing dynasties carved 183 niches into that cliff. 694 stone sculptures, 82 clay statues, murals covering 900 square meters of vertical surface. When UNESCO inscribed the site as part of the Silk Road's World Heritage in 2014, their assessment noted something that architectural historians still find difficult to account for. The stylistic integration between 4th century work and 14th century work is so consistent. Proportions matching, spatial logic continuous, the overall composition coherent, that the site reads not as a series of additions accumulated over a millennium, but as a single, unified design. A design that took 1,600 years to execute across dozens of generations, with no blueprint that has survived. The oldest cave at Bingling, Cave 169, carries a carved inscription dating it to 420 AD. That makes it over 100 years older than the Mogao caves at Dunhuang, which most historians cite as the origin of Chinese Buddhist cave art. Bingling was not a successor to that tradition. It was the tradition, and almost no one outside China has heard of it. Cave 169 stops every expert who enters it. It is 15 meters high, 19 meters deep, 26 meters wide, carved into a cliff accessible only by rope from above, with no floor to stand on during construction. Inside, covering nearly every surface, are frescoes. The original pigments, ochre, cinnabar, azurite, malachite, are still visible. Not restored, not retouched. 1,600 years old and still present, in colors that have not faded in any significant way. No heating system, no humidity control, no climate management of any kind for 16 centuries. The reason the colors survived is the canyon itself. The orientation of the cliff face, sheltered from prevailing weather by the specific geometry of the gorge, angled away from direct rainfall, positioned to receive diffuse rather than direct sunlight, creates a microclimate that functions as a natural conservation environment. That orientation was not an accident. Selecting that specific face on that specific bend of the river required an understanding of the canyon's wind patterns, its rainfall direction, its seasonal sun angles, and how each of those forces would interact with porous sandstone over not years, but centuries. The first artisan in 420 AD chose that wall knowing it would still be standing when people he would never meet came to finish what he started. There is a discipline embedded in every centimeter of Bingling that is almost impossible to hold in the mind. Site 5, Nemrut Dag, Turkey. There is no easy way to reach this place. The road stops. Then there is a path. The path climbs through the eastern Taurus Mountains of southeastern Turkey, above the tree line, above the cloud layer on most mornings, until it reaches the summit of Mount Nemrut at 2,134 meters above sea level. The air is thin. The wind is constant. There is nothing around you in any direction except mountain and sky. And then you see the heads. They are not small. Each one stands between 8 and 9 meters tall, roughly the height of a 3-story building measured from chin to crown. They are not attached to anything. They rest on the ground, slightly tilted, gazing outward across the mountain landscape with an expression that is neither welcoming nor threatening, just permanent, just there. Beside each head, a few meters away, sits the body it once belonged to. A colossal seated figure, still upright, still on its throne. The heads were separated from the bodies not by anyone's decision, but by 2,000 years of earthquakes, which rocked them loose one by one and dropped them where they now sit. There are 5 main figures on the east terrace, 5 on the west. Gods: Zeus, Apollo, Heracles, the goddess Por-Bajin. And among them, on his throne, seated as an equal beside the gods of 2 civilizations, is the man who built all of this. His name was Antiochus I, king of a small mountain kingdom called Por-Bajin, ruler from approximately 70 to 36 BC. He was not a great empire builder. Por-Bajin was a minor state caught between Rome and Parthia, surviving by diplomacy and careful neutrality. By the standards of the ancient world, Antiochus was a footnote. He built this because he believed he was a god, and he wanted future generations to know it. The first part of this that has no explanation is the stone. Getting multi-ton limestone blocks to the summit of a 2,000-meter mountain in 62 BC is not a problem that archaeology has solved. Por-Bajin was a small kingdom. Its population was not large. The labor force required to quarry, transport, and position stones of this size up a mountain with no road in the 1st century BC does not match any reasonable estimate of what Por-Bajin could have organized or sustained. No tool marks have been found that explain the method. No logistics record has survived that describes the process. When German engineer Karl Sester became the first outsider to see the site in 1881 and filed his report to the Prussian Academy of Sciences, he described the construction as something he could not account for. That was his professional assessment. He was an engineer surveying the Ottoman Empire's transit routes, a practical man whose job was solving exactly these kinds of logistical problems. He could not solve this one. The second part, without explanation, is the tomb. Antiochus I built Nemrut Dag as his burial sanctuary. The entire monument, the statues, the terraces, the processional routes, the carved reliefs, was designed to honor and protect the physical remains of the king. At the center of the summit is a burial mound, a conical pile of crushed rock 50 meters high and 145 meters in diameter, believed to conceal the burial chamber. American archaeologist Teresa Gowell dedicated decades of her professional life to finding it. From the 1950s through the 1980s, she led excavations at Nemrut Dag, tunneling through the mountain slopes, mapping the subsurface, searching for the chamber that Antiochus had prepared for himself. She never found it. After Gowell, other teams continued. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have been conducted. Geophysical imaging has mapped the interior of the burial mound. As of 2026, the tomb of Antiochus I of Por-Bajin has never been located. He is in there, somewhere in that mountain, and 2,000 years of searching has not found him. Now look at the West Terrace. Among the fallen heads and upright bodies, there is a stone slab. It depicts a lion. The lion is carved in relief, muscular, precise, facing right. Across the lion's body and above it are carved 19 stars. 3 of them are labeled they are not stars at all. They are planets: Jupiter, Mercury, and Mars. Archaeologist Best Tomai of Adiyaman University, who studies how ancient builders aligned their structures to the stars, has spent years analyzing this relief. Her conclusion, verified against independent astronomical modeling, is that the positions of those 3 planets relative to the 19 stars correspond to a single specific night in history, July 7th, 62 BC. That is the date, according to the inscription on the monument itself, of Antiochus I's coronation. He did not simply record his coronation date in text, as every other ancient ruler did. He recorded it in the positions of planets above a stone lion, using a precision that 21st century astronomers can verify without dispute. The stone slab at Nemrut Dag is the world's oldest known astrological calendar. It was carved into a mountain summit 2,000 years ago by a king who is still buried somewhere beneath your feet. Stand at Nemrut Dag and hold all of it at once. A tiny kingdom, a 2,000-meter summit, multi-ton stone moved by methods no engineer has identified. Statues of gods wearing the face of a man who believed he had earned the right to sit among them. A coronation date encoded in the positions of planets with a precision we could not improve upon with modern instruments. And somewhere in the mountain, beneath 50 meters of crushed rock and 2,000 years of silence, a burial chamber that has never been found. Not because we have not tried, because we have not found it. He is still in there. Site 6, Yonaguni Monument, Japan. Go underwater. You are 25 meters below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, off the southern coast of Yonaguni Island, the westernmost inhabited island of Japan, closer to Taiwan than it is to Tokyo. The visibility is good today. Strong current, as always here, pulling you sideways as you fin down through blue-green water toward the seafloor. And then the wall appears. Not a reef, not a rock tumble. A wall, flat, vertical, dropping straight down from the platform above it. You follow it sideways and it does not end. You look up and there are steps, broad, level steps, each one cut at a right angle to the one above it, ascending in tiers toward the surface. You follow the steps and they lead to a terrace. The terrace runs level for 50 meters. At the far end of the terrace, there is another right angle, another drop, another flat face of stone. The structure is 25 meters tall, 100 meters long, 60 meters wide. It covers approximately 45,000 square meters of sea floor. The rock it is made from, sandstone and mudstone, is 20 million years old. In 1986, a dive tour operator named Kiichiro Aratake came to this area looking for a good site to show tourists hammerhead sharks. He found this instead. He surfaced and told people what he had seen. Most of them did not believe him until they dived it themselves. Nobody has agreed on what it is since. Here is where this site becomes unlike anything else in this video. Every other structure we have looked at today has a clear human origin. The debate about Kuelap, Mesa Verde, Cahokia, Bingling, and Nemrut Dag is not whether humans built them. It is how and with what knowledge, and what happened to that knowledge afterward. Those questions are hard. But the first question, did people make this, is settled. At Yonaguni, the first question is not settled. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura of the University of the Ryukyus has dived the structure over 100 times across more than 3 decades of research. His conclusion is that the monument is a human-made stepped structure, modified from a natural rock formation by people who inhabited the area before sea levels rose at the end of the last ice age, somewhere between 10,000 and 8,000 years ago. If Kimura is right, Yonaguni is the oldest human structure ever identified anywhere on Earth. Older than Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Older than anything in the current archaeological record by several thousand years. Geologist Robert Schoch holds a doctorate in geology and geophysics from Yale University. He has published a formal paper on the site titled "An Enigmatic Ancient Underwater Structure off the coast of Yonaguni Island, Japan." His conclusion is the opposite of Kimura's. Every feature visible at Yonaguni, Schoch argues, can be accounted for by the natural fracturing and erosion of bedded sandstone. The right angles form where 2 perpendicular joint sets intersect. The flat surfaces are bedding planes. The steps are what happens when softer layers erode faster than harder ones. No human hand required. Both men are credentialed scientists. Both have examined the same structure in person. They have looked at the same steps, the same terraces, the same right angles, and reached conclusions that cannot both be true. Neither the Japanese Agency for Cultural Affairs nor the government of Okinawa has classified Yonaguni as either a natural formation or an archaeological site. Officially, it is neither. It has no designation of any kind. It sits on the seafloor, 25 meters down, and the debate continues above it. There is no pottery at the site, no tools, no human remains, no inscription, no carved symbol, no object of any kind that did not exist before humans arrived. because we do not know if humans arrived. There's only the structure, its steps, its terraces, its right angles, its flat walls dropping into blue water. And that absence is the most honest thing about Yonaguni. Every other site in this video came with evidence, named researchers, published studies, verified measurements, Drexel University and drone LiDAR mapping at Kuelap, Kenneth Wright and 8 years of hydrology at Mesa Verde, Timothy Pocketat and the Mississippian Big Bang at Cahokia, 16 centuries of inscribed cave art at Bingling, Bestitomai and the world's oldest astrological calendar at Nemrut Dag. Evidence that compelled conclusions, uncomfortable ones, but conclusions nonetheless. Yonaguni does not offer a conclusion. It offers the structure and the question. That is all. And the absence of certainty here does not weaken what you have seen today. It strengthens it. Because if a natural geological process can produce steps, terraces, and right angles precise enough that a credentialed marine geologist spent 30 years arguing they are human-made, then the line between what nature builds and what humans build is less clear than we assumed. And if that line is less clear than we assumed, then everything we dismissed as beyond the tools of the era deserves a second look. The absence of a clean answer at Yonaguni is not a gap in the argument. It is the argument. Site 7, Por-Bajin, Russia. Find it on a map, and you will understand immediately why it should not exist. Southern Siberia, the Senglen Mountains, 1,300 meters above sea level, 20 kilometers from the Mongolian border, in a region so remote that the nearest town has a population measured in hundreds. There's a lake here, Lake Terikol, cold and shallow and ringed by mountains. And in the middle of the lake, there is an island. And on the island, there are walls, 12 meters tall, 12 meters wide at the base. They enclose a rectangular area of 3 hectares, 7.5 acres. And inside them are the remains of more than 30 buildings. Not ruins in the sense of rubble and collapse. Ruins in the sense of foundations, layouts, standing wall sections, roof tile fragments still in place. The arrangement is formal and deliberate. Axial planning, a dominant central structure, smaller buildings arranged in sequence along the inner perimeter. 3 gates, ramps, and a wooden fighting platform that once ran along the top of the curtain walls. Archaeologist Irina Arjantseva of the Russian Academy of Sciences, who directed the large-scale excavations in 2007 and 2008, described the layout as combining 2 distinct architectural traditions simultaneously. The Chinese ideal town format, with its central axis and administrative logic, and the ideal Buddhist monastery format, with its living quarters arranged around an enclosed courtyard, in the middle of a Siberian lake. In the 8th century AD, now consider who built it. The Uyghur Khaganate was a nomadic Turkic empire, horse people, steppe people, a culture whose architecture was felt and timber and rope, not rammed earth and glazed roof tile. They ruled a vast territory across Mongolia and southern Siberia, but their power was in movement. They did not build cities. They did not need to. And yet, between approximately 775 and 777 AD, a window of 2 years, someone inside the Uyghur nomadic empire arranged a transfer of the most sophisticated construction knowledge of the Tang dynasty of China to a lake island at the edge of the known world. The walls were built using the hangtu technique, a Chinese method of compressing earth in precise horizontal layers inside a wooden frame, producing walls harder than fired brick. The roof tiles were Chinese in manufacture and style. Dragon motifs in the Chinese tradition were found among the excavated fragments. The entire planning logic was Chinese. Bogu Khan, the ruler of the Uyghur Empire, commissioned Por-Bajin, In 763 AD, he had converted to Manichaeism, a minority religion with roots in Persia, and declared it the state religion of his empire. Researchers from Lomonosov Moscow State University, publishing in 2020, concluded that Por-Bajin was most likely a Manichaean monastery, built to house the new faith at a site of deliberate remoteness and symbolic isolation. In 779 AD, 2 years after the complex was completed, Bogha Khan was assassinated. An anti-Manichaean uprising swept the empire. The new faith was abandoned. The empire returned to its old beliefs, and Por-Bajin was left. Not destroyed, not dismantled. Left, the gates were closed. The building stood empty. The roof tiles settled into the courtyards over the following centuries as the wooden beams rotted and the structures collapsed inward, slowly, without witness. Magnetic surveys conducted by the research team in 2007 and 2008 found no evidence of ancient hearths anywhere on the island. Not one. There was no heating system installed in any of the 30-plus buildings. In a Siberian mountain environment, where winter temperatures dropped to levels that kill exposed humans within hours, Por-Bajin was built without the means to survive a single winter night. Not a single winter was ever spent inside Por-Bajin. It was completed, and immediately, it became a monument to something that no longer existed. Every structure in this video was visible, above ground or one dive below the surface. You could stand at the base of Kuelap's walls, or cross the lake to Por-Bajin's island, or lower yourself into the water off Yonaguni with a mask and a tank, and see it with your own eyes. Everything we looked at today was findable because it was there. Present, physical, exposed to anyone who knew where to look. But there is a category of ancient construction that is not visible at all. Not because it was destroyed, not because it collapsed or eroded or was buried by time, because it was designed to be hidden, deliberately. From the beginning, built underground, carved into bedrock, sealed and concealed in ways that suggest the builders did not want what was inside to be found easily, or perhaps at all. In the next video, I'm going to show you 7 ancient tunnels and underground cities that engineers today cannot explain, not what they were for, how they were built, in rock so hard it would destroy a modern tungsten carbide drill bit in under an hour, with precision so consistent across kilometers of passageway that the deviation from a straight line is measurable in millimeters. Underground, in the dark, without power tools, without surveying instruments that we know of. If you want to be there when that goes up, subscribe now and turn the notification on. It will go to people who are subscribed before it goes anywhere else.